Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from over half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponari of SciMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigman of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. For the freshest content, a peek behind the scenes, and more candid conversation about running our businesses, dealing with clients, fixing tough technical issues, and everything else you love about Command Control Power, we invite you to join us on Patreon so you don't miss any of this great content. Go to commandcontrolpower.com and click support. Pledge monthly, and you can instantly subscribe to the patron-only shows right in your favorite podcast app. Once again, to join us on Patreon and get the latest patron-only episodes, visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support. We hope to see you there, and thanks for listening. Command Control Power is brought to you commercial-free thanks to the support of our community. Our VIP supporters include Jason Detbarn of Adigy.com, Collide.co, John Brown of GroveTech.co, Watchman Monitoring, and Adam Engst of Tidbits Content Network. Thanks very much for supporting the show.
Recently, for both of my kids, it was time to upgrade their phones because both of their phones were at least 2 years old. One was an SE, and I think the other one was an iPhone 8. And so one of the kids, we wanted to get them the better camera. So not the Pro Max, but the Pro. And the other girl, she didn't really care as much. So we got her the straight iPhone 14 with the lesser resolution camera. So I forget which one I ordered first, but that came in the mail because I ordered them directly through AT&T. And one of the reasons why I did this was you get a slightly better trade-in value on your phones if you go through AT&T. And of course, it's subject to evaluation. So a side story to this is one of the phones, they disputed if the screen was working or not. So whatever, you take your loss and move on. But the thing I wanted to mention was when I ordered the second phone, I was checking out and I must have not seen a little checkbox because it says, good news, your address qualifies for our AT&T to you option. I don't know what this is all about. And it's a free shipping, right? So I'm waiting for the thing to come. And all of a sudden I get this communication from this guy who works for a company named Enjoy. They're subbed out by AT&T, and he wanted to set up an appointment to come to my house and set up the iPhone.
Okay.
Right?
No, thanks. Yeah.
So I told him, I said, look, I don't want you to do any of this. He says, well, I have your phone and we have to set up a delivery. I said, I'm not sure why this isn't coming in the mail like the other one was. And he said to me, I'm not sure either. But he said, I'll help you onboard the phone. And he said that again. And I'm like, no, I want you to give me the box.
Give me the phone.
He says, I'll help you activate it. No, I don't want you to activate it.
Wait a minute. Does he get paid by AT&T or by you in this situation?
It was free. I qualified for the program called Right to You.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, like whatever. And there was a window of time and he showed up late and it was after dark and he's out in the parking lot. And his marching orders at most places that he was doing this was he comes in your house and he unwraps a phone for you and he helps you activate it and do whatever thing he must need to do to follow his script on the behest of AT&T. I couldn't believe this. So I saw him out in the parking lot and I went out into our driveway and I said, look, I'm sure you're trying really hard. You're doing a good job. But I don't want you in the house. No offense. And the thing was, here's to add insult to injury, he smelled boozy.
Oh, no. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't want you in the house. I wonder if that's the first time he's heard that.
I might have chosen other words. And he says, no, I totally understand. I have some people who do this. And I said, look, I don't even know what, I'm cutting to the chase here in my story. And like I'm saying, I don't even know why you're here. Just give me the phone. I'll sign whatever paper I want. I'm going to do all this. And I told him what I did for a living. And he goes, oh, okay. I know you know this, but a lot of people don't. He's blah, 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 blah. It took me a while to get rid of him. Wow. He said, well, if I give you the phone, I need to take a picture of a parcel on your doorstep. And I'm like, do whatever you need to do. Take as much time as you want in the driveway, but go away.
Yeah.
I just want my phone sealed. I don't want you touching it.
a parcel on the doorstep.
He has to show that he made delivery on it.
So he's bringing you the parcel, but the real work is him activating it and stuff. Why would the parcel ever even be on the doorstep? But anyway, whatever he needs for his records.
Yeah. And then I get this email that says, "We hope you enjoyed your visit with Anthony."
How did we do?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for confirming the delivery of your new device from Enjoy.
It's really
like,
weird.
What the heck? Yeah. It was direct from the AT&T website, not through any kind of third-party reseller. So there was something that said give feedback. So I'm not going to throw this joker under the bus. I told him that he was wonderful. Just leave me alone. But what a bad experience.
Yeah. It's definitely weird. It's not a thing you needed or wanted, was relevant in any way. The simplest thing is just send me the phone. I'll just receive it when they deliver it like normal packages. And then you just set it up at your convenience, not during a meeting with some random person. If you'd have a real hard time doing it on your own, AT&T sent it to you, and then them supporting you remotely would take significantly longer. A phone agent has to spend 2 hours on the phone because you're not able to go through the steps because maybe whatever, you have an issue, you're a little older, whatever the situation is, that a customer could have trouble with that. I don't know. Does it pay to have them go to you for less time? There's travel time though. So it would have to be significantly less, and they'd have to have statistics showing that if we ship it to this address, we think old people live here, and it's going to cost us 5 hours on the telephone to actually get the phone set up, and they're going to jump ship for Verizon. That's a big stretch though. I can't imagine why this would ever be. Is he there to upsell you on more services, get you to
No, actually I shared with you in the chat, and we'll put this in the show notes, where I took the wrong turn. This is a little checkout window. And instead of picking the first one that said free, I needed to pick the second item down that said free. See how that says right to you there with the trademark?
Yeah. And I'm also looking at how they have this specified. It says fast, free delivery, and optional device setup with AT&T right to you service mark. Optional device setup would be if he convinced you to let him in the house and then agree to pay. It says free right next to it though. So optional device setup, I was thinking they're going to try to upsell you on that, but this looks free. Just like you said, these are both free. I don't understand why they would ever want to send someone to your house at all.
And he did have a costume on, and he had a badge around his neck, so he had plenty of ID. He didn't look sketchy. He didn't have a hoodie on from Tommy Hilfiger or something like that, and wants to come in and check out the stereo equipment. Just a crazy experience. So buyer beware.
Man, yeah, weird stuff. It sounds like maybe they're even trying it out. I just don't know what they're looking for as far as feedback and stuff. But yeah, that's very interesting. Speaking of vendors to complain about, this is not one I usually complain about, but I had an issue where every few minutes I was getting alerts from Watchmen about this server rebooted. And I'm like, oh boy, what's going on? And it was the Mac Mini in my office, and it was a server, but it doesn't serve anything anymore. And in fact, I was planning to decommission it when I'm home in a couple of weeks, or back in Connecticut in a couple of weeks, and maybe try to sell it. I don't even know if it's worth anything. It's probably not worth anything now. I'm troubleshooting the issue. I'm like trying to log in, can't do it. And then I'm seeing like other things, surveillance cameras like disconnecting and reconnecting. So I'm like, it's not just the server, because the cameras are unrelated. They talk to a Synology. So what's going on? It sounds like a power issue. Maybe the power went out in the office and the battery backup was powering the devices for a little bit and then losing power. And then the power would come back on and it would power back up. And I was trying to sort out logically what could possibly be going on. Nothing made sense. So I sent over to Tim, hey, when you're in the office tomorrow, I just need you to look at this. I don't know what's going on in the server rack. Sometimes you just need eyes on it. Is the power totally out? Is the internet having issues? Is one of our switches dying? What is going on? In the meantime, I look into it and I looked at the Wattbox thinking maybe the Wattbox, based on the way I set it up to automatically power cycle some stuff, if there's issues, like maybe it's doing that a little too overzealously. Maybe it thinks there's an issue and it's cycling the ports or whatever. I see the last reboot was over a year ago. It hadn't had to do that in a very long time. I don't see anything in the events log at all about any issues, but I'm connected to the Wattbox, no problem. So he looks into it. He looks at the Mac Mini. It's powered off at this point. I'm not getting alerts anymore. Now it's just dead, basically. Or I didn't know if it was offline or dead. It's dead. And so he's troubleshooting. He sees it's plugged in where it's plugged in on the Wattbox, where I have remote power capability. I think I had tried to power cycle it on the Wattbox at one point. So he bypasses all that, plugs it in, boots it up, no problem. Okay, it's the Wattbox. Best we can tell, it's the Wattbox. And sure enough, there's a few outlets on there that the switch and this and that, other things are plugged into. So I go on the Wattbox site and they have this RMA program for specific models. Sure enough, my model was one of those affected.
By the way, I'm taking a drink every time you say the word Wattbox, and I'm half drunk here now, but please continue.
Nice. Yeah. So Wattbox had this problem a few years ago. We started seeing these, and it first started happening in a similar kind of way. The network's down. What's going on? Crap! It's not getting power from this port. This is a port on the Wattbox.
Oh boy.
You reset it, troubleshoot it. Yeah, they identified an issue. They admitted to an issue. There was something about, I don't know if it was a bad solder joint that wears out over time through heating and cooling cycles, or whatever it was like an internal circuit board issue, and it was affected certain models and certain serial numbers were affected. So this one is one of those models, and I put in the serial number and congratulations, whatever, it's covered. I didn't get this far, but I think you can put in a request or something like this cost me 2 hours on site or whatever, because I had to go fix the problem that the Wattbox itself is exactly supposed to solve. And so I guess they probably got a lot of flack. I'll never trust you guys again. You're supposed to save me a truck roll, not cost me an extra one. And so they had something about that. I thought I would be covered. I thought they would just ship me a brand new one. And these are not cheap. They're hundreds of dollars in many cases.
All right. I need more information.
Yeah.
So this is Snap AV.
Yeah.
This is the parent company.
The product is the Wattbox.
Going forward, can you just say WB, or would that take more effort, do you think?
I have to translate it in my head. I don't know.
And my other question to you is, how many sockets were on this WB?
The WB had, I think, 12S. I'm just going to abbreviate sockets as S now.
It's a big boy.
Yeah. It's a rack mounted to you from now on.
Yeah, because the ones I've dealt with are much smaller. I've done 3 socket units, 5, maybe 8 tops. Okay.
Yeah, this thing's great, and especially extra peace of mind when I wasn't there every day in person anymore. And I could do things like, if there's a power outage, I could shut down the servers remotely and just minimize the power usage. So I just have the core equipment on. Obviously, you know what it does. If the modem needs to be rebooted, it'll just do it itself, or I can troubleshoot by rebooting different things. We had a time capsule that would lock up. Back in the day when we were using this, it would lock up every once in a while. And I found that just needed a physical reboot. So I just scheduled a reboot to happen every, whatever it was, weekly or something. And I didn't really care. Sure. That was an extra backup. Different things that the Wattbox is great for. When it fails catastrophically like this, basically failing at its very job, which is a pretty important job, to supply power reliably to your various equipment, that's frustrating. But I thought, okay, at least they cover it. This is great. So I reached out to them. Heard back, I don't know, later that day, maybe it was the next day. Unfortunately, your thing's no longer covered. It was more than 5 years old. So, fair enough. I guess you can't really count on anything to last longer than 5 years. But the fact that it was a known issue and was one of the covered units specifically made me think, if it wasn't one of these affected units, it probably would have lasted longer than 5 years. So overall, frustrating. Now, I don't need it anymore, really, because we don't really have a server infrastructure of any sort. You joked recently about my Kerio server, and we'll get to Rackspace maybe in a minute. I don't have a mail server. I don't have a file server. I don't have machines I need to remotely access and reboot and whatever. I don't need the Wattbox anymore. But the fact that it cost me some frustration was annoying enough. And if it had happened at a client, I would be extra frustrated, because then I would have spec'd it, say, 5 years ago to the day, and then the thing would have failed. And then I'd say, oh, we have to come out there for 2 hours today to troubleshoot it, and 2 hours in a week to install the new one. And who's going to pay for that? That would have been very frustrating. Not only buying new hardware, but paying me to replace the hardware that we installed. It's always a sticky conversation. Yeah, that was really frustrating. It reminded me of soft-RAID mirrors. Do you know what I'm referring to, Jerry? A soft-RAID mirror used to be a good way to configure a server, we thought, 10 years ago. You have a Mac Pro, you've got 2 bays. Back then it was spinning disks. One could fail at any time, whatever. You don't want to lose anything.
I do know about dolly drive mirrors, but no, I kid, Joe. I'm a kidder. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, soft RAID back in the day, and you'd have mirror drives for your boot drive. Yeah, It was a perfect solution, and it made sense. I think it became less of an option, the fact that they sold to Otherworld Computing.
Yeah, but yeah, it was this setup that you would do as a precaution. Hey, sell the client a second drive, whatever the cost was incremental, and it provides extra peace of mind. If something goes down, you don't lose any data. You can keep working. In practice, if a drive fails and it's marginal, it's just going to slow the RAID down for a while. So that had some side effects. But the thing I'm actually referring to is in the days before Adigy, we didn't have the Mac OS upgrades blocked even on servers oftentimes. So somebody would get on there, some client would think they're doing something great because Apple's suggesting this new, all the marketing goes out and they install the new Mac OS and it bricks the machine because it was booted to a soft RAID mirror. And I don't know if this ever affected you, but in the days of, I want to say it was like Yosemite or that era, that would brick the machine. And it's actually, the problem is the thing we recommended. It's Apple's compatibility issue. They shouldn't have bricked your machine. They should have discovered that there's a soft RAID mirror as your startup disk.
But I recall this was a bone of contention between you and a client, a specific client.
I'm sure that may have happened at one point and I just had to talk my way around it.
You remember.
It reminds me of that when the WB, see, I did it.
Very nice.
The WB died because it fails catastrophically, like in a worse way than it would have failed if I just had all this stuff plugged into Surge Protector or better yet, a battery backup directly. It's like one. So
that was it. They didn't even give you any kind of an accommodation price on a replacement unit. I know that you sell Snap AV equipment, Wattbox, and other things that they sell like Arachnus. You have reseller pricing, and then you can mark up accordingly. Yeah. So they didn't offer you any kind of an extra spiff to...
I don't think they liked my response because I think I wrote back in the tone of one of my clients, see the Patreon shows. That's disappointing or something like that. I don't know. I didn't say, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I could have said that. They just didn't respond. And it's fine. I didn't say, please, I didn't demand anything or say, get back to me or anything. They just were fine to let the ticket close, I'm pretty sure. And I let it go. Everything's up and running now. Although it killed my Mac Mini. Now that Mac Mini, like I said, was on its way out. It was a 2012 model. I don't know if it was worth $50 even or whatever. It had an SSD in it and whatever, but it would have just finished securely erasing that, the last of it, and then sold it. I can't do that. So it cost me a little bit of time. I just moved on. It was frustrating to deal with the vendor that they had these issues, bad quality assurance. I don't know what they can blame it on. They did the right thing for a little while, but they stopped supporting after 5 years. And again, I still can't really fault them. 5 years is about as long as you can expect a vendor to cover something. So
yeah, I think that's the out of warranty repairs. I think for Apple, that's the cutoff time too. Because I remember trying to do a dance recently with a delaminated older Mac, and I tried to fight that battle with Apple, and they were very nice about it and basically said, yeah, you were definitely in the out of warranty repair program. That ship has sailed.
Yeah. Speaking of, one last thing on the topic of soft RAID, I haven't been too pleased with the way it works in the last couple of versions. I mentioned actually an issue with the client. It was the OWC Thunder Bay, which relies on soft RAID to do its magic. And soft RAID, and blame Apple for some of this with their security requirements and things. More recent macOS versions becoming more and more secure and therefore blocking like any old thing from running. Whatever kernel extension you want to install, just have at it. And now they have a couple more hoops to jump through and things like that. So some of the kind of recent troubles I've seen are related to that. But one issue is just a bug. And apparently it's a bug in Apple's driver. I did some research on the issue. So the issue was that client has a new Mac Studio, had an older Promise and an older Thunder Bay. So went with the new Promise Pegasus 32. She just needs a lot of space for her photo archive. She's a photographer and needs a backup also with sufficient space. And so external RAIDs were the way to go. Direct attached, Promise Pegasus for the main one and the OWC Thunder Bay to save a little bit of money on the backup one. She started having issues after the initial setup, just random kernel panics. The machine would shut down. We traced it down to something to do with the 2 RAIDs. She was due for a new Promise main RAID anyway, based on the age. So we recommended that and a new Thunder Bay. Initially, that solved it. So, she said everything's been working fine. And then all of a sudden, she starts having the issue again. So we said, I did some research and I suggested that she unplug just the Thunder Bay and just keep the Promise Pegasus connected and work normally and see if that holds up. And sure enough, it's been fine for a day or so. And in the meantime, I found that there's a specific issue with a RAID 5 stripe set to 64 KB. I'm abbreviating kilobytes for you, Jerry. The issue is that it's a driver in Monterey that's built in that has a bug. I don't really know the specifics of it, but supposedly Apple's going to fix this, according to, of course, OWC, but they still have it. And this goes all the way back to 7-8 months ago, at least, if not longer. And I don't know if Ventura solves it. Maybe they're not going to fix it in Monterey at this point. And who knows? They don't tell us that. It would be nice if they would indicate like there's a fix for this coming in Ventura or whatever. But the solution is you have to use a block size or stripe size of 64 kilobytes if you're using a RAID 5 drive. And this is specifically affecting soft RAID for my client and for some other references I found. I don't know if there's another competitor soft RAID, and I don't know if it affects hardware RAIDs per se, but I do know that's an issue and supposedly that fixes it. So you have to change the stripe size, which of course means reformatting it. So luckily it's just the backup. We've recently migrated her to the new hardware. So I think we're going to be able to just wipe the backup drive, reformat the Thunder Bay with the RAID 5 stripe as 64 KB, and clone her data back to, or run the backups, whatever, and then hopefully it'll be problem solved. But yeah, that was frustrating with SoftRAID again.
And you had to chase this down, or when you finally deciphered what the problem was, it was very clearly posted on the SoftRAID site, or you had to do this sleuthing?
I found it on Reddit, actually, and I think there might have been a Mac Rumors post as well. I don't recall. I just did basic searches, found these references to people with similar issues, someone as recently as a month ago. This is still an ongoing issue, obviously, according to them, but she or we didn't get any guidance that we noticed. I think that they may have this up now, requiring this as a workaround. Yeah, no, we had to do the research and kind of figure it out.
That's rough. That's rough, where you have to reinvent the wheel. And some of this is billable to the client, but some of it's not, because it's technology that's not working, that's out of your hands.
Yeah, and stuff that we recommended. Not only did we recommend some little old piece of software, but we recommended a bunch of new hardware, Mac Studio, the 2 new RAIDs, the whole thing. So yeah, you're right. Some of it clearly won't be billable. So I mentioned Rackspace in regards to no longer running a Careo mail server, despite Jerry posting to the contrary that I should fire it back up.
Yeah, time to spin it up, Joe.
Yeah. So
you could have made serious coin. You could have reached out to people on Twitter and had about maybe 200 tenants on that thing.
Yeah. I don't know how this affected you guys. We had 2 clients that were significantly affected. Anybody who was affected was significantly affected. No incoming mail, can't send mail from that account. If you only relied on the web or Outlook web access, you had no access to any of your historical emails. That's pretty devastating. And considering that a lot of these vendors do consider that the first primary kind of way of doing email. Sure, they let you set it up in Outlook, but they really only like to support like Outlook web access in my experience. You lost access to all of the above. And not being able to receive email, you might be in the midst of closing a big business deal. I could see Rackspace being sued for loss of productivity and things like that. So I had these 2 clients. We troubleshooted initially, found that, okay, it's just down. There's nothing we can really do. This is a very widespread problem. We bought ourselves a couple days. Let's see if it comes back up, and then, problem solved. But meanwhile, we're reading about it in the background and realizing that this is looking pretty sketchy. There's some evidence and reason to believe that their infrastructure was not patched against a 0-day. They had more than 0 days to fix it by now. Never patched something, supposedly. That could be false information. But eventually they did confirm that, sure enough, it was a security incident. So that's where we are. And as we record, we're still right at the beginning of December. When this airs, this might be slightly older news, but as of now, their Exchange infrastructure is not back up. So they've been recommending that clients move away from Rackspace. It's basically the advice from Rackspace is, we can't do email for you anymore, so go to Microsoft. So how did you guys deal with that in the fray of all this going on last week?
We had a few, and the interesting thing about it all is we had actually a couple of quotes out. A few of them were from 18 months ago to move away, and they never pulled the trigger.
Of course.
And then one was as recent as last week that we sent because they had an incident where a couple of their email accounts were compromised. Listen, it's really time we get off of here. Enough is enough. And then 3 days later, this happens.
Wow.
I told you, but it's too little too late at that point. We have a couple of customers that are on hybrid environments. So even though Hosted Exchange was down, their IMAP accounts were up, but the Hosted Exchange accounts were for the more important people in the organization.
Right.
So that didn't do them any good. And what we made the decision on with most of the customers that were on it was, forget Rackspace's free 365. Let's just get you 365 licenses outside of Rackspace and do that migration or a change of DNS. And then we'll worry about historical data later, because there's nothing we can do, quite frankly, at this point about the historical data. And that's the road we've taken with the majority of the 6 people or 6 customers that we had on there.
Wow. Sounds like a nightmare.
It was a rough weekend you were chilling, Joe. Jerry and I were like frantic over the weekend. We're like, oh my God, what are you going to write? What are you going to say? And you're like, I'm off to a wedding. See you guys later.
Luckily, Tim had been, just based on the timing of when this all happened, he jumped in and was working with those 2 clients actively. I think it was on Friday last week. And I was leaving on Saturday morning, first thing for a wedding. And so it was great that he was handling it. He had everything under control. And I was just basically giving all of you guys advice. I think this would work to just do a migration under duress. It's not the way you want to do a migration. First, set up the new domain, change the MX records, get everything working on the new site, the new host. And then, like you said, Sam, like worry about the historical mail later, which hopefully the infrastructure comes back up and the server's there and you can say, let's do a migration. And then let's wait 100 times longer than usual because everybody's migrating away from Rackspace. Their stuff's going to be hammered for weeks. Hopefully we can get it. And if not, let's migrate locally. And so for the 2 clients we have that this had affected, Tim managed to migrate some of this stuff locally. There's issues with migrating calendar events in this way. If the calendar event is a quote unquote meeting, an event with attendees, you can't just drag and drop. That would be too simple. And that may be for the best at this point because it used to be you drag and drop or export import to the new service. And then everybody gets invites for meetings that happened 10 years ago and stuff. So that wasn't always a great scenario either, but you can't migrate those meetings en masse to the new service. So anyway, it was very tedious, very time consuming. And again, an example of how much can we charge for this? And not that we had recommended Rackspace in those cases. You just have sympathy for clients that are going through it. So you want to go a little bit easier on them. But yeah, that was rough.
The problem for me was communication with the clients because there was a lot of misunderstanding of what would happen if we just simply set up accounts on Microsoft. I had 5 clients that were affected by this. And just as a sidebar to this story, I think 2 or 3 years ago, up till that point, I had been using Rackspace for my own business. And I think the deal breaker was they hadn't implemented 2-factor yet with their hosted exchange. Yes. And we had discussed this on the show and we said, that's just, forget it. And this is just like ridiculous. Prior to that, in years past, we had recommended Rackspace as a viable option. Since that time, of course, Microsoft has really stepped up their game and it's pretty easy to do. So you brought up a couple of really good points, guys. One of the things is how much should you charge? So if you've got a small group, let's say 5 to 12 users, there's not really a lot of work. You either have the client sign up the account, the primary account, and text you the information, the login information, or you do it for them with their credit card, and then you add the users and you adjust the MX records. So there wasn't really a lot of heavy lifting. So I think in most cases, we only charged them with no weekend extra charges, just a flat 2-hour fee. And because I didn't feel like I needed to capitalize on their misfortune. So I thought that was fair to me, even though I was working over the weekend. But the biggest problem was the misinformation that Rackspace was sending out. So during this time period, as they decided, we're going to have all the users use our Microsoft 365 still underneath the Rackspace umbrella. And of course, as Sam said, that was a non-negotiable condition. Like, no way would I have any client do that at that point. That ship has sailed. But the problem was in some of the messages that they were sending out was, we've helped restore thousands of customers to 360.
That's right.
Yeah, there was no restoration. It was a misuse of terminology, just really offensive, real reprehensible. Maybe by the time this airs, there will already be a solution out there. We don't know how we're going to move all that legacy data into these new accounts.
Speaking of the poor communication from Rackspace, they were indicating, like, we're still investigating why some users can't log into our hosted exchange. And it seems like they were pretty sure what was happening right away. And users couldn't log in probably because who knows what was ransomed and encrypted on the servers, leaving them inoperable. And I have to imagine they shut down the infrastructure. So
according to hearsay, that's what happened.
Yeah, it's like investigating why you shut down the infrastructure. So that's probably why.
Right, yeah.
Like, at this point, that's why.
That was the crucial part that they were leaving out. And then they eventually said, we proactively shut down the hosted exchange environment. And we're like, okay, that's jacked. We're in some serious crap right now. Once they said that, and then they mentioned that we're offering 365, I forget if they said indefinitely or until further notice, we are toast. Once they said those words, that's where we all started gathering our heads and figuring out what the next step should be.
Yeah. And I was still getting emails from people saying, from what I read here, if you just change the DNS, then we'll get all our old email.
No.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, battling the misinformation. How clear do you have to be? We're going to do this thing that's going to work around the problem so you can at least receive mail and send mail, but you won't have access to your old mail. And then I don't know, why do they not understand that? They start reading the thing themselves and misinterpreting it. And yeah, frustrating.
People get into a frantic state too. And then I was joking on the side outside of the show about a customer that we have that used to be yours, Joe.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't know why we're working with that customer, but
I'm sorry, man.
I told you all. Yeah, I told you all. This is unacceptable. It doesn't matter that you think it's unacceptable. She's like, I've asked you to call me. If you take half a second to click on the link that I sent you, it'll explain it all. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And finally, I had someone else call because I just couldn't. Not that I would blow my top at someone, but I just don't have the patience. I've said this before, to deal with stupidity. And I'm just like, someone else, please call her because I just can't.
Yeah.
And she finally she's an email tough person. Like you call her and she was fine. And after that, by the way, she recommended another customer to us and they emailed us on Sunday from their home email address. And like, oh, so-and-so said you can help us out with our email migration. Get in line, pal. There's nothing I can do for you right now. I'm working with my actual customers.
Did they say that's unacceptable? Put me at the front of the line?
No, but any recommendation from her, I'm staying clear away from.
Oh, yeah. See the previous and forthcoming Patreon episodes for more on the above.
Sam, as far as billing, did they have to pay the World Cup tax on your charges?
Interrupting my World Cup games is very precious, but I heard what you said. At least you're billing for your time, so that's good, but you're not adding on any weekend time, which I think is kind. It's tough for these organizations, especially the smaller ones, to deal with this. The customers that I helped over the weekend were longtime customers that they just have 2 people left and they're not a big deal. And I like them personally, so I haven't really decided, to be honest with you, how much I'm going to charge them yet. Maybe they can get me a nice bottle of bourbon or something and I'll call it a day because it was not that hard. There are some certain people in your life that you're like, I like you. You're okay. Let me give you a hand. But I do have a business to run, so I got to figure out what I'm going to do long term.
Yeah, I think an hour and a half of your time is not unreasonable, especially because it happened over the weekend. And the real sad thing was if you watched Twitter, and you could even go on there today, it's just really sad. All these poor people who are completely clueless, they have no idea. And so their only recourse or their only way of trying to get help was to get into a Rackspace phone queue or open up tickets. And there were people sending screenshots where they were on the phone for 3 hours, 5 hours. There was one screenshot, I think, where the phone was on hold for over a day. Just really sad stories.
Over a day. Like you just leave it on hold at night.
That's what they did. Yeah.
Oh, man. That's rough. Oh, wow.
Under their pillow.
And we've been doing this a while, and I don't think Rackspace represents people all over the world, like hundreds of thousands of people, but still a significant amount of people. I don't think we've ever seen this happen to this degree. Am I right with email from a vendor?
Yeah.
Pretty extreme. Yeah. I can't think of another example. Usually it's like one of their servers that's like affecting whatever number of people there, but not every single person who uses Rackspace for email hosting.
One of my last emails to one of my customers was, if it's any consolation, I've never seen them be out for an entire day. And those were my last words to them. I was like, whoopsie.
Yeah. Unprecedented. Yeah, pretty much. One of the biggest ransomware attacks. And yeah, it's pretty rough. Is it correct that they were running Exchange 2013? Did you guys see that reference to which version of Exchange was unpatched at Rackspace that had this flaw? Exchange 2013, I guess it was patched this year for the couple of 0-day issues that were found.
Yes, they were running Exchange Server 2013, and Microsoft is still rolling out patches. They did one in August, one in October, one in November. So it's still continued to be supported, but it's old technology.
Apple, they never made a server product that was enterprise worthy in a certain way. And one of the reasons is they would not support it for 10 years or whatever it's going to be with updates. They barely support it for 3 years. It's just a different world over there. And if you're running this antiquated server version, and Jerry, I think your clue, they should have clued everybody in, was like, they don't support 2-factor. That's just insanity.
What's ridiculous about that is their IMAP accounts do, but their hosted Exchange don't. Like, what?
Wow. It's like, why? They're in the business of hosting servers, and Exchange is one of their primary offerings. And for them to go this long without migrating their infrastructure to modern systems, and I don't know how they run it, but I just can't believe it's like a client, like you were describing, Sam, putting this on the back burner year after year, like just deferring the recommendation to upgrade. It's what Rackspace was doing behind the scenes. Just like they weren't quite there yet. And they were pretty exposed for a company that does this as their primary business. It's egregious that they would get to that point. Command Control Power wouldn't exist without the support of our community. Special thanks to the following community members whose strong monthly support has sustained us for all these years. Ryan Gowdy, CoreCompetent.com, Weldon Dodd, Kanji.io, Richard Wingfield, EnvisionDesign.net, Adam Rice, AskAdam.io, Mac Admins Podcast, podcast.macadmins.org, Tim Nyberg, TheMacGuys.com, Michael Thompson, Origin84.com, Matthew Waples, Waples.net, Tom Puls, BoxIT.tech, Jerome Potters, PITPro.nl, Steve Sorbo, MacSOS.biz, Andy Espo, callandy.com, and Nate Sinal, weareascout.com. Thank you all very much, and thanks to our patrons at every level of support. If you enjoy the show, we really would love your support. And if you already support us and can increase your monthly pledge, we really do find that encouraging. CommandControlPower.com and click support. Thanks very much for listening and for supporting the show.
Of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.